Hello, I'm Steven and welcome to my video on Apache NiFi Registry. So, what is NiFi Registry and why should you care? NiFi Registry provides a ability so you can create versioned data flows, which allow you to store and retrieve them directly from the NiFi Registry. And because they're versioned, you also have to have the ability to roll back to an older version of that data flow that you've created. So it's a really handy tool to have when working with Apache NiFi, plus the fact that you can store your version data flows off of your main server, NiFi servers, and into basically a repository, which is the NiFi registry, is very handy as well. It means you can move your data flows pretty quickly once they're versioned from one server to another. So say you had a development server and inside the registry, you were versioning your stuff there. And once you were good to go with them, you could actually take your other server, that's your production server for NiFi, and load that into that server directly from the registry. So you have pretty good control over it. All right, so before we get started, as you've seen right here, we're on the NiFi registry webpage. So you can go ahead and download from here. And most importantly, you don't get documentations from up here on the bar, but you scroll down below to the documentation section where it says NiFi registry documentation, select that, and then you'll get all of the documentation you need for getting started, user guide and admin guide, and the REST API if you're interested in that. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So in order to create this, we're going to be using, or in order to get this done, we're going to be using Visual Studio Code. So in here, I'm going to connect to my Windows subsystem for Linux environment, and I'll go ahead and do that over on the Remote Explorer. Now, if you don't have WSL targets available when you get here, the Remote Explorer drop-down button or box here, you can go ahead and select between WSL, SSH, and containers, just in case you're on something else. Now I've connected to WSL plenty of times in my Ubuntu environment here, so I'm going to go straight to my Docker folder here, open. That'll start up, get me connected. And as you can see inside of my Docker folder in the Explorer here, I have a whole bunch of directories with different test Docker Compose files set up for different services and stuff, just so I can test them out and make sure they work the way I want. So first thing I'm going to do, create a new directory here, and I'm going to call this one NiFi Registry Sandbox. Nope, I totally messed that one up. I'll change directories into that one. Okay, so we have nothing here. And the first thing we'll do is touch a new Docker Compose file. Code Docker Compose, that should open it up for me. There we go. So I can go ahead and get started on creating the environment that we'll need inside of Docker for setting up and configuring both NiFi and the NiFi registry together so that they work. All right, so let me go ahead and grab, because I've done it plenty of times now, I'll go ahead and grab the beginning of my Docker Compose. All right, so this is the NiFi container being created, or the services, right? So we have our service, NiFi. Oh, actually, I'm going to do a different one that I want for this, because I don't want to have a conflict with another NiFi that I'm running. There we go. It's just slightly different. Okay, so first service is going to be NiFi Sandbox, version 1.15, so the latest version. I'm going to open up a port. I'm going to limit it to 2 CPUs, 2 gigs of RAM, and I'm going to set a couple environment variables. First one's going to be the single user credential, which is going to be admin. I'm going to set the password myself, because in NiFi 1.14, starting then, they started creating the basic NiFi starts up with a secure environment, and it automatically generates an admin, and then on top of that, a random password. So I want it to be the same all the time, and I want to know what that is. And I believe, if I remember correctly, you have to have a minimum of 12 characters when you create a password, so you could do smaller if you wanted to. I'm also going to set the NiFi sensor prop key myself and not let it generate it. This way I always know what it is, and anytime I restart this environment, if I shut it down and I restart the same one, it won't try to build a new password that doesn't match the one that's already there inside the volume. All right, so got my volume set up. I'm going to bind a drivers directory, just in case I need drivers, which I won't for this one, but I'm doing it anyways. So that means I need to make a directory called drivers, otherwise it would not work. So that's there. And I'm going to have it connect to, I'm going to have it utilize the network I already have created. So if I jump over here to the Docker on the sidebar, you can see that I already have the images on my computer, so it doesn't have to re-download those. Saves a little bit of time. Under network, my network is already created. It's a bridge network. And then I have no volumes right now. All right, don't need this either. All right, so this is my network. Next thing I need to do is go ahead and create the registry sandbox service. So one more. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and create that. And let me grab it. And then I'm going to, yeah, no, we should be good. I need the network portion, right? We need to make sure we have network in here. All right, so same thing, NiFi Registry Sandbox. Got a label, the image or container name. Then the image we're going to use is going to match our 1.15 NiFi. The port is going to be forwarded. 1 CPU, 1 gig of RAM for my limits. And I'm going to have it use the external network I've already created called DevNet. All right, so finish this up now. Need to include the volumes and network sections of the compose file. There we go. All right, so this is our Docker compose file. It looks like everything's correct. I don't see any syntax errors, but it will let me know if I have any when I try to run it. So I'm going to save that, come back down here, and Docker compose up -d. If I go, looks like no errors. You can see the two containers are started over here. They're under one main branch. And from here, if I wanted to, if you're not familiar with Docker inside of VS Code, I can go ahead and say right-click, view logs. If I want to see the NiFi server, you can see it's still booting up, so it's not done here. Could also go take a look at the registry if I want to, view logs there. And it looks like it's ready to go. So while we're waiting for NiFi to start up, we can go ahead and check out the registry and see if it's completely brought up and check out its user interface. So let's go ahead and jump back over there and take a look at that. All right, so I already have some links here. NiFi registry, perfect. So this is the NiFi registry UI. So you'll be limited on some functionality in here, depending on whether or not you have a key store, trust store set up, and you have SSL and all that good stuff. So without that, you are, and more importantly, if you have the correct provider set up so that it lets you log in, right? So right now we're just starting this up. You just want to get it working, connect anonymously, and not worry about users and groups. But that is the reason why if I go to settings, you can see I have an option for a bucket buckets. But under users, I can't select that because the NiFi registry security is not enabled or set up correctly. So, and I'm not worried about that. That's only if you need it. So you can go ahead and set it up that way. But you do get some additional functionality when you do that. So let's go ahead and close settings. All right, so we're all good in here. Now, one thing we will need to do is we can't do anything else in here right now. But what we can do is go back to here, and NiFi has these buckets. So buckets are where you're going to be storing your data flows. So if I was in a environment where I wanted to maybe, say DevOps, I could go ahead and put that, give my description, create that bucket. And if I wanted to as well, I could go back and say, hey, this is my prod bucket. And I'll go ahead and create that one too. So now I could have a bucket just for data flows that are not in production yet. And there we go. Now you do need to keep in mind a couple of things, which is when you save things into, say, DevOps, you can't move them into, from the NiFi registry, you can't like drag and move them to another bucket or change the bucket they belong to. So you have to think ahead about that and how you want to handle it. All right, but we have our two buckets, right? So let's go ahead and close this, go back to the main. And now we don't see anything in here yet because there's nothing in our buckets. So we'll just show all buckets. And now let's go ahead and jump back into, let me see, we should be up on our NiFi. So let's go ahead and check that out. So back to containers, accept that, accept the risk, we're good to go. And admin, I already got my password in there because I've been using the same one all the time. And there we go. So really quickly, use Docker Compose, Docker environment, VS Code, you can get a environment set up and running in a matter of no time. All right, so here we are in NiFi 1.15. So the first thing we need to do is configure NiFi with our NiFi registry. So we do that by coming over here to the hamburger menu. And from here, we select controller settings. And there's a section over here for a tab called registry clients. And now we go ahead and add it and populate it. So let's give it a name, NiFi Registry. And you can see it requires a URL to connect to it. So it's telling us remote host and the port. So for this one, I'm going to go and what I'm going to use is the container name because they're on the same network. That was the point of making sure that they were. And then, so here we go, HTTP. And the port was 18080. So I think I got it all right. All right, so that's in there. No errors or anything, so we're done there. And let's see if it's working correctly. So the way we can do that is by creating a new process group. And then from here, things look a little bit different. We have import from registry. You have your template option. So let's go ahead and call this one, give this one a new name. We'll say reg test. And I'm going to add that. So here we go. Registry test is in there. We have a new group. We have a processor for generate flow files, and then we have one for log attributes. And very simply, all we're going to do is connect them, accept, and then over here, let's say destroy everything. It's good to go. Tell to make 10 every second. All right, and let's just give it some text real quick for content. Okay, let's go with my key, my value. All right, 10 got created and 10 got destroyed over here. So that's going to work, keep doing its thing. And we can go back out here now. Now what we have here, what's different about the UI here? On the bottom here, we have a couple new icons. One, we have a check mark there. It says up-to-date version process group. And then we have locally modified version process group. Still version process group, locally modified. And then we have sync failure version process group. So you got a couple new icons here to let you know what's going on with your NiFi registry and your versioning. So if we want to version this, what we do is we right click on it and we have a new category in here called version. So we can go ahead right now. This is a version controlled process group. We can right click on it, say start version control. And if this is working correctly, we'll see our buckets. So if you had multiple registries, you could go ahead and pick between them. And then you can swap or pick what bucket you want to work with. So we'll say DevOps right now, right? And give this flow a name. So you can name it independently of what you have in there. Registry test flow group. You can give it a description if you want. You can give it a version comment if you want and say initial. Let's just say initial version. There you go. We can save that. And now things are different. Down up here at the top, say, got a new check mark next to the name of the group, saying tracking registry test group version 1 in NiFi registry DevOps. So it has a green check mark on it. And the way this works is if it's green, it means it's versioned. Now, what if we change something? So let's make a significant change that's different than what's going on right now. We can say, maybe we have another log attribute. Maybe we decided to split it off someplace else. Well, that's all done. We can come back out here and we no longer have it. It says tracking the registry test group version 1. Local changes have been made. So some things are different here now. We can right click on it, go to version, and we can commit the local changes if we want to, but we can also show local changes. And in here, we can see the difference in here. So processor was added, connection was added. So we created a new processor called log attributes, and we created a connection as well. And we can jump to those if we want. So here we go, version 1, that's what it has in it. We go back out here, we can, oh, we can't use that yet. So let's go ahead and commit this. Commit. Let's say added new process. And you can see here, so some new information. It still tells us the registry, the bucket, the flow, and the description. It also tells us this is going to be version number 2. So iterated on for us. We can give it a comment. We can save it. And we're good there. So that's all done. We have our check mark. So we know we're updated and committed. So what's this look like inside the NiFi registry? Let's go take a look. Jump on over here, refresh. And now we can see our DevOps group, right? We can see that we have a NiFi test registry group in here. We can open it up and get some basic information on it as well. So we know it's on version 2 now. And it has a bucket identifier, flow identifier, description. The change log is over here, so we can refresh that if we wanted to. So version 1 was created 3 minutes ago by Anonymous. So this is where you get the benefit of, if you have NiFi registry set up for security, then you can get that benefit of knowing who made these changes, which is awesome. So we can go ahead and take a look here. And like I said, and then from version 1 to version 2, well, what happened in here, right? Everything between the two, well, we added a new processor, date, and here's our timestamp for it. So here's the next one. We can go ahead and collapse it. We can go ahead and open this one up too. So now here's our history, and that's what we have going on here. So this is our version, right? From here, we can go ahead and import a new version, export versions, and delete this flow from the bucket itself. All right, so what's the advantages of having this? Let's jump back over to NiFi, right? Go over here, and we could say, well, let me go ahead and, oh my goodness, someone came along, I was working on this flow, somehow they stopped everything in there, then they came and emptied out all the queues, and the person really wasn't paying attention, and then they just decided to delete the whole thing. Well, darn, this isn't good. So how do we go ahead and get this back? Well, what we can do is go ahead and jump in here and add a new group, process group to it. We can say import from registry this time. Click on that, pick our registry, our bucket we want to import from, so nothing in there, just the DevOps one, right? And we can pick the flow from a list of multiple flows in here. We can also see on this one, there's 2 versions available. So let's go ahead and bring back that original version, or the one we were just using, version 2. Import that, and we're done. I mean, this is really cool. Being able to have this in NiFi makes if you wanted to upgrade this way, you could, right? Everything's saved in here. You could stand up a new server, bring it and maybe update, or you could have a server crash, bring your flows back in here real quick and stand up a server and just get back to where you were. So it's really cool how you can do this. The other thing we can do, go back in here to versions, and we can say change the version, right? So you can also stop version control on this process group. Let's go ahead and change it. Let's go back to what the initial one was. Maybe someone came along and made a change inside the flow that really kind of messed things up for you. All right, so now our icon changes. A newer version of this flow is available. So it's telling us we're not on the newest version. We can go into it, and we can see that it's back to the original version, which is excellent, right? We can come back out here, right click on it, and stop version control if we wanted to. But we're going to be out of sync right now because we're using an earlier version. Going back over to the registry, we can go ahead and refresh here and see nothing's really changed here. So we have our 2 versions here. I could take this delete flow, and we can get rid of the entire flow if we wanted to. So now NiFi, it's not going to exist anymore. So in order to redo this, we'd have to disconnect this one and then go ahead and version again. Let's say test group 1. And we'll just skip on those two right now. And we're going to put this inside of back inside the DevOps. All right, so before I was talking about like, well, what if this was my dev server and then all of a sudden I had I'm good with this version. I created this data flow. I'm good to go. It works in dev. I'm ready to put it into my production environment, right? Well, that's one thing that's a little trickier. So we come back over here. We have our flow back inside of our DevOps bucket. And I want to get this into the other bucket, right? Well, doesn't really work that easily here. I mean, we could import a new flow, but we'd have to go over here and see, oh, wait, we can't pick them. We can't do it this way. Okay, so that doesn't work. So one way I've gone about doing it in the past is just to leave that there. And then once I know this is good to go, really all I've ever done is just come back in here. I'm ready to move to a production server. So I want to move. I don't just want to have it imported into my, I don't want to import it. I want to manage it better, right? So in this case, because I want this to exist now inside of the version to exist inside of my other bucket for production, the way I normally do it is just come in here, stop the version control here. This is the most updated one now. The one that's ready to go in production. And then I'll go ahead and reversion or redo it, change the bucket, and then go ahead and say prod test group. I'll go ahead and commit that one now. And here we go. We're all good to go. Now we come back over here. We have our prod test group here is available for us to get to, right? So even when we're all, now when we look at all, we can see DevOps and prod. We have one in both. Now, you may want to clean this up if you don't want to have a copy in it, but hey, it could be beneficial to just have this final version that came out of development left in here and available just in case you ever need to go back to it or whatever, right? But here you go. Gives you a way to you can navigate around that way and kind of cheat your way into it. It would be nice if you could just drop them into the other one or push them over to the other guy. But that's not a thing. So there's some other things you can do to extend the NiFi registry a little bit more. And one of those is to go ahead and create a GitHub repository where you can have, every time you commit changes into here, the registry will automatically commit those as well to GitHub. So I'll go ahead and cover that in the next video, and I hope you look forward to it because I definitely like doing that one. So I'll catch you then.